understanding of some of the committee's questions and would like to address those issues head-on and up front as best I can. In order to do that, I do need to be in a closed classified setting. I'll reserve the remainder of my opening remarks for when we go to the closed classified setting. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a brief opening statement on behalf of my intelligence community colleagues in the interest of brevity. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee, my name is Deirdre Walsh, and I serve as Director of Legislative Affairs for the Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper. I'm here in response to the committee's request to answer questions about the recent document production by the FBI to Congress related to former Secretary of State Clinton's email. While I understand the Intelligence Community Inspector General, or ICIG as we refer to him, may have interacted with the interagency with regard to these documents, by statute, the ICIG maintains his own interactions with the Congress separate from my office. Accordingly, I cannot speak on behalf of the ICIG. With regard to the documents produced by the FBI and the subject of this hearing, ODNI was not involved with this document production. I will, however, do my best to answer any of the questions that you may have. Additionally, I'm joined by my colleagues from the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and the National Security Agency in response to the committee's request. Given the classification of the underlying material, we look forward to discussing sensitive matters in the closed portion of the hearing. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. It's my understanding, Mr. Higgins, Mr. Samuel, and Mr. Soul, that Ms. Walsh's statements reflect the IC. Okay. We'll now recognize myself for the first set of questions. Mr. Herring, what information do you believe that Congress does not have the right to see?
So we believe it's important for oversight committees to understand how the FBI reached our conclusion.
No, wait. I'm asking you a philosophical question here. What does Congress not have the right to see?
So I don't know if I can answer that in a way that, I think there's more to it than a simple answer. I think that each case is sort of specific to its own set of facts. I think Director Comey tried to be as transparent as he could with this committee.
Do you think he could be
other committees as he responsibly can be? So I think when he spoke and he answered questions.
Wait. What is it that I, as a member of Congress, or any member on this Congress, either side of the aisle, what is it that you believe we don't have the right to see? See, this is the way our government works. We get to do oversight. That's why since 1814 this committee has been doing that. There's executive privilege. Let me help you. There's executive privilege. Has the President invoked executive privilege in this case?
No.
The answer is no. Good. That's right. The answer is no. Is there any other situation?
Look, when it comes to classified information and the classification that deals in the executive order, not all the information that we have in our files belongs to us. We defer to other agencies when it comes to access to their classified information.
But you are the ones that put redactions on personal identifiable information, correct?
We did on the personal identifiable information, that's correct.
Where in the Constitution does it say that I can't see that?
Does it address it specifically in the Constitution?
So, can you cite any legal case, any precedent that says that Congress can't look at personal identifiable information?
I cannot cite any legal case.
Are you aware that Congress is exempt from the Privacy Act?
I am.
Does the FBI treat congressional document requests as FOIA requests?
No.
Will the FBI provide Congress all of the 302s?
All of the 302s, we have one set that you've been provided already. The rest of them are coming through the FOIA process.
Wait.
Yep.
We're not, FOIA process? You mean I got to fill out a FOIA request?
You can. Not necessary.
Here's the problem. You handpicked the 302s to give to us. My understanding of discussion with staff, and I appreciate your accessibility with the staff. You've been good, and you're new, and for your first time hearing, this is a tough one. But the reality is, you should give us all the 302s.
So let me say this. I think that I think the director made principled decisions about what to say to Congress when he was here and also what to provide to Congress. As far as the
Wait, where do I
redactions of
find that?
personally
Do
identifiable
we just let everybody in government decide that they're based on their own individual principles? That's what see, it's trust but verify is how it works. You don't get to decide what I get to see. I get to see it all. I was elected by some 800,000 people to come to Congress and see classified information. I was elected by my colleagues here to be the chairman of this committee. That's the way our Constitution works. Will the FBI provide to Congress the full file with no redactions of personal identifiable information?
I cannot make that commitment sitting here today.
Then I'm going to issue a subpoena, and I'm going to do it right now. So let's go. I've signed this subpoena. We want all the 302s, and we would like the full file. You can accept service on behalf of the FBI?
Certainly.
You are hereby served. We have a duty and a responsibility. You can cite no precedent, nothing in the Constitution, no legal precedent. You know this is important to us. You now have your subpoena. We would all like to see this information. I've gone past my time, or coming up on going past my time. I'll now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Cummings.
You've been in the job 4 weeks. I can't hear you.
Yes, sir.
And you used to work for one of our distinguished colleagues, Mr. Goodlight, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Republican. So I'm going to, so you're familiar with Congress then?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to save most of my questions for the classified session, but I do want to address the redaction issue briefly. When the FBI produced these materials to Congress, their cover letter stated, and I quote,
The
FBI has
summary and
redacted.
the 302s.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Some of the 302s. And when you don't show up at a meeting that we request behind closed doors, kind of lose that opportunity.
If I could,
Now we're going to recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy.
Agent Herring, did the FBI interview the sender of all emails that contain classified information?
you know, I don't know the answer to that question, only because I'm a Ledge Affairs guy. I was on the investigative team.
Can you find out? You would agree with me it'd be important. I mean, you'd want to interview the person who sent the classified information, right?
Certainly.
Because the recipient thought the C was just the third letter in the alphabet. You might be curious whether or not the sender also was clueless in the way he or she viewed classified information, would you not?
That would be a logical investigative step.
Can you find out whether or not you interviewed the sender of all emails that contain classified information?
Certainly.
Do you know if the sender of any of the classified emails knew that the information was classified at the time?
I don't personally know that. I wasn't part of the investigative team. I'm sure that.
Can you find out?
Certainly.
Can you find out for me?
Yes, sir.
There are folks wondering how information gets from a classified source into an email. Did your investigation shed any light on how classified information could get from a classified system into an unclassified email to even be sent? I'm not even talking about the receiving of it. I'm talking about the sending of it.
I'm sure they did look at that. That would be sort of a logical question you would ask as an investigator in a case like this.
That's what I thought.
But in my legislative sort of affairs capacity, I just don't have that kind of visibility.
Well, don't sell yourself short. You used to be an agent, right? Still an agent, right? So you know what you're doing. Did the FBI grant immunity to anyone during the course of its investigation?
For immunity questions, I'd have to defer to the Department of Justice for that. It wouldn't be an agent who would grant that kind of thing. That
Did the Bureau recommend the granting of immunity?
I do not know.
Do you know whether the Department of Justice granted immunity to any witnesses?
I know I saw some articles last week, but that's the extent of
Well, surely you got better sources than the media for that, don't you? You can ask the guy sitting 2 people down from you.
I would have to defer to the Department of Justice, sir.
Do you know whether any witnesses asserted any privileges while they were being interviewed?
I don't know.
But the Bureau would know that, right? Because they would have asserted the privilege while you were in there.
I'm sorry?
The Bureau would know that, right? Because that privilege would have been asserted perhaps while you were in there conducting the interview.
What kind of privilege are you talking about, like attorney-client privilege? Or
Oh, there are a
what
bunch
you
of
talking about?
privileges. There's priest-penitent. I'm guessing that one didn't come up. There's doctor-patient. I'm guessing that one didn't come up. There's the Fifth Amendment privilege against incrimination. That one might have come up. Attorney-client privilege, again, there have been media reports that one came up.
Sir, I just don't know the answer to those questions.
Have you ever had the attorney-client privilege come up during any of your investigations?
Certainly.
Who does the privilege belong to?
The client
So the client can waive it, right?
can.
You understand why Congress might want to know whether or not the attorney-client privilege was waived and who the client was?
I can certainly imagine.
Yeah, me too. That's why we want to see the file, Agent. I mean, you say it's unprecedented. Mr. Cummings used to be a criminal defense attorney. He got to see all your 302s. Ken Buck used to be an assistant United States attorney. He got to see all your 302s. Probation officers get to see all your 302s. Why can't Congress?
Sir, I think we have tried to provide the information in a way that is understandable. I think the investigative summary tells kind of the story, and I do think that the 302s that we provided are the important ones.
Well, let me ask you this. If those summaries were all anyone ever needed, why don't you just introduce those in trial? Why actually call the witness?
Well, certainly we actually trying to make your life a little bit easier in the light of the
But see, I don't want my life being made easier. I don't want that. I want to know what was said in the 302s. Because the 302 is itself a summary of an interview, right? It's not a verbatim transcript.
That's correct.
So you have given me the summary of an interview. And I'm not asking for a verbatim transcript because you don't have one.
Sure.
I'm just asking for the 302. So I don't have to read your summary. I may read the 302 differently from the way you read it. So why not?
So I think we've given you the relevant ones as we've
Relevant according to whom? I am telling you, I don't think you've given me all the relevant 302s.
Well, the remainder of the 302s will come out through the FOIA process.
But since when did Congress have to go through FOIA
Correct.
to obtain 302s from an investigation that's not even resulting in any prosecutions that your boss has already said is over? Since when did we have to go through FOIA?
So I think that the 302s we have provided, I think that we made a principled decision about what to provide. It was certainly made at the highest levels of my agency.
All right, I'm out of time. That's what that knocking sounds. I'm just going to say with all due respect, you don't get to decide what we think is relevant. And I do say that respectfully. The defense attorneys get it all. I think Congress ought to get it all.
Thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Maloney, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to reserve my questions to the closed session, but I would like to clear up some misconceptions. I would say that the campaign season is upon us, and the accusations and the charges and the attacks are almost out of control. I just spent, I won't get into it, but anyway, for several weeks, the chairman has been appearing on national television saying that the reason that he cannot see these emails is because the FBI produced to Congress is because they are such a highly sensitive, classified, high level. And for example, he stated that these materials were, and I would like to put his quote in the record, so secure and sensitive that even I, as the chairman of the Oversight Committee, did not have the proper clearance to see it. But in fact, as I understand it, Mr. Herring, Chairman Chaffetz has not been able to view these documents. The reason he hasn't been able to see them is because the Republican chairman of the Intelligence Committee has not allowed him to do so. The documents were produced and given to the Intelligence Committee, that we bring in the chairman of the Intelligence Committee and ask him why he doesn't have a vote and release the documents to you. It is not the FBI, but the House Select Committee on Intelligence who's withholding these documents. So
Will the gentlewoman yield?
I most certainly will.
Any one of the 4 people from the intelligence community here can help answer this. Have you made redactions on personal identifiable information to the Intel Committee? Mr. Higgins, how about you?
No, we have not.
There's no redactions at the... Ms. Walsh?
Not to my knowledge.
Mr. Samuel?
No, Mr. Chairman, not to my knowledge.
Mr. Sewell?
No, Mr. Chairman, not to my knowledge.
Can you release these emails into the public? And if so, what would happen? Mr. Higgins, what happens if we release these emails on Hillary Clinton's unsecured server? What happens?
Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that CIA participated in a classification review process, and I'd be happy to talk about that process in closed session. Needless to say, some of the materials do include classified information that we do not believe is appropriate for public release.
And are some of these materials include sources and methods?
Mr. Chairman, I'd prefer to discuss any further matters relating to classification in closed session.
Gentlewoman's time has expired, but thank you so much for yielding to me.
But reclaiming my time, I get to close in my time. You took all my time. I thought the chairman could have, I think the chairman can have all the time he wants. I'd just like to conclude by saying, and I just ask for just a second, what our committee is engaged in is nothing but a partisan attack on Secretary Clinton with an effort to harm or undermine her presidential campaign. That's all it is. Get the chairman of the Intelligence Committee to release the documents to you. No one is withholding it. The Intelligence Committee has jurisdiction over agencies, including the FBI. They release their information. They have a process. You have appealed to that process. Let's wait for that process. Ask him why he's not taking a vote to give you access to these documents. You're making it look like there's some conspiracy or some terrible thing happening when it's really nothing but a partisan attack on Secretary Clinton.
I thank the gentlewoman, and I guess with some indulgence, where I have a problem is when they redact information that is deemed unclassified. I don't understand that. It makes no sense. And classification is one issue, but when they redact information that has already been designated as unclassified, I believe that Congress should be able to see that.
Mr. Chairman, may I respond?
Sure. Yeah.
In the hearings that we've had, the witnesses have testified that personal information that has been redacted has been to protect the privacy of people and personal information. Now that's on record. But in the classified section, we can have more of this clarified.
Thank you. And I appreciate the dialogue back and forth. Now let's recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Herring, let me just follow up with where the chairman was. So did the FBI make the redactions dealing with personal identifiable information?
We did, yes.
You did. That's what I figured. Okay, Mr. Herring, you've said we don't have all the 302s. We don't have the whole file. And what you did give us, as you just pointed out, had lots of redactions.
Yes, sir.
And the chairman invited you to a briefing last week in a classified setting, which you said in your opening remarks where you'd like to discuss this information. So who told you not to come to the briefing? Because the chairman was there, I was there. In fact, every single Republican member was sitting there waiting anxiously for you to come do what you just said in your opening statement you wanted to do. So why didn't you show up?
So let me say a couple things here, if I could, just to sort of be clear. As far as the 302s and what we've provided and what we haven't provided, or a lot of 302s, or dozens of them, and we prioritized up front what we thought were the most important ones. And so those are the ones we gave
But you got them all, don't
a couple
you?
of weeks. We do have, and we're working on the others.
So you can get the paper, you can give it to us, or frankly, you could have told us what you just told us right there. You could have told us that last Wednesday, but you didn't come. So why didn't you come?
So I actually want to address it in the classified setting, if I could. there was certainly
Someone tell you not to come, Mr. Herring?
conversations. There were some
Someone tell you-
conversations between me and some of the committee staff about what the briefing was going to be about.
No, I'm asking, did someone tell you not to come? You were invited, we were all waiting. We don't have all the 302s, we don't have the whole file. You've told us you made all the redactions. We were going to ask you about that. We were going to do it in a classified setting, which is what you preferred, what you want, what you've told us today you want, and someone told you not to come. Who told you not to come?
It was my decision, but I'd like to explain it away in the classified
Wait.
setting
You
process.
decided on your own? You didn't consult with anyone else?
Certainly consulted with the director's office.
And the director said, it's up to you, Mr. Herring. I'm not going to decide. You're going to decide? Really?
So a lot of it has to do with what the discussion was going to be in the classified briefing. And I think there was some confusion, at least on my part, about what the expectations were in some of my conversations with committee staff last week.
Do you have any other discussion? Just you and Director Comey talked about this? You talked to anyone else?
Certainly, we have our general counsel's office, the Department of Justice. There are a number of people.
Mr. Herring, was this case different? You said you've been around the FBI 17 years. You're now the acting director for legislative affairs. Was this case different?
I think this case is different in a lot of ways.
A lot of ways.
I do.
Can you tell us, can you give me some, why? I know it's different in a lot of ways. How about this difference? You ever had a case in your 17 years where the subject of your investigation's husband meets with the Attorney General just a couple days before you're going to interview that individual in your investigation? You ever had that happen in your 17 years?
No, sir.
That's certainly different, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you ever have a case in your 17 years, and we appreciate your service, you ever have a case where the Attorney General announces publicly that she's going to follow the recommendations of the FBI, even though she has no idea what those recommendations are going to be, based on, you ever have that happen in your 17 years?
Not on one of the cases I was assigned.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's ever happened because the Attorney General told me she's never done that until this time. Certainly. You ever in your 17 years, you ever have a director of the FBI, you ever have them do a big press conference, walk through all the wrongdoings of the person under investigation? You ever have that happen, a big press conference before, and then make this big announcement? Or normally the FBI just kind of announces whether they're going to prosecute or not, right? You ever seen that before?
I mean, we certainly have press conferences, not quite like that one.
Not quite like that one. That's exactly right. And then have you ever had this? Now, maybe this happens, but Mr. Cummings said in his opening statement, Republicans didn't like the answers Mr. Comey gave. Well, that may be true, but based on what Mr. Comey did last week, where he sent a memo to you and all your colleagues, looks to me like a lot of former FBI agents, and maybe some even current ones, didn't like some of the answers they got from this investigation. You ever seen that before? Mr. Comey says in this letter, I explained to our alums, I'm okay if folks have a different view of this investigation. So there's obviously some folks who used to work in the Justice Department didn't like the outcome either. Now, they may be Republicans like Mr. Cummings says. They may not be. So I've never seen that before either. Have you, Mr. Herring?
Frequently, we get messages from the director on a variety of things.
Yeah.
I think in
2 months after he makes the announcements, he thinks it's important to send a memo out 2 months later to all his employees and saying, hey, I better fill you in on some things here, why we did what we did. You ever have that happen 2 months after the fact?
I think oftentimes he wants the employees to understand what's going on and full level of transparency both outside the Bureau and inside the Bureau. We're a
So
big
2
agency.
months later, you got a memo.
36,000 or so employees.
This case was different, but here's the problem, Mr. Herring. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be different. Everyone is supposed to be treated equally under the law. And I know deep down you know that. You're 17 years serving in our government. You know that, don't you? Everyone's supposed to be treated the same. And in this case, this individual was treated different. And everyone in this country knows it. And that's why we're having this hearing. And that's why we'd have liked you there last week to give us the information a little sooner than later tonight when we go into a classified setting.
So can I answer that? I mean, I think it's important for us as an agency to be apolitical, to follow the facts in any case where it takes us. And I do believe that we follow the facts in this particular case. And Director Comey certainly made a very difficult decision. But ultimately it is the Department of Justice who makes the determination of prosecution.
No, hold on.
But real quick, not in this situation, because she said she was going to take his recommendation.
The gentleman's time has expired.
It's a false statement.
We're now going to recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you for your service. And then, regrettably, second of all, I need to apologize for the way that you're being treated here today. I know that we've worked with a number of you in the past, and appreciate your service to the country, and like some folks here, I recognize the separation of powers. While I do agree that Congress has a very wide jurisdiction for investigation, I also know that we are not a law enforcement agency. We are not a trial agency. And under the separation of powers in this country, it's not consistent with the Constitution for the legislative branch to overturn a decision, especially on an investigation, in a potentially criminal investigation and you've decided not to prosecute. It is completely out of bounds for Congress to overturn a decision of the court on one specific case. And I want to go back right to the beginning. The notice of this hearing, which was supposed to be closed, and so I apologize that you're being lambasted and denigrated in public when you were asked here to come here to a closed hearing. And all this is happening out of bounds and totally inconsistent with the chairman's letter that this would be a closed hearing. There is a relevant case law, and Mr. Herring, I would say that there is constitutional language that would prohibit what's going on here today in requiring you to divulge the names of individuals that have been redacted during your investigation, and that constitutional language is in the Bill of Rights, and particularly the Fifth Amendment. And I want to go back to a case called Watkins versus the United States. This was a matter brought forward by Senator Joe McCarthy in the House Committee on Un-American Activities. And Watkins was brought forward, he was subpoenaed to testify before the House Committee on Un-American Activities, and Chief Justice Warren delivered the opinion of the court in that case. And he said there's no general authority to expose the private affairs of individuals without justifications in terms of the functions of Congress. Nor is the Congress a law enforcement or trial agencies. These are the functions of the executive and judicial departments of government. No inquiry is an end in itself. It must be related to and in furtherance of a legitimate task of Congress. And investigations conducted solely for the personal aggrandizement of the investigators or to punish those investigated are indefensible. Now, the notice for this hearing says that, number one, the purpose is to review the redactions that were made by the FBI during their investigation. And, to review the redactions, omissions, and circumstances surrounding your investigation. Now, as you said before, Mr. Herring, in bringing witnesses forward to get them to cooperate with the FBI, well, look at it this way. If the law is correct the way the chairman and my Republican colleagues are looking at this, here's what we could do. This committee could identify somebody, we could refer somebody for investigation by you, our secret police, the FBI. You could go out and investigate all these people, and then we would have the ability to publicly embarrass them by removing any redactions that you put in place. That's the world that we could create here. And what is the one instance when this exercise, this overreach of power is being administered? It's when we're investigating the Democratic nominee for president a couple of months before the election.
The particular case we're talking to,
That's when this is going
dealing
on.
with Secretary Clinton's emails, the case was declared closed by the director, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And that came after, and I pointed this out the day he was here, just an unprecedented series of events, and Mr. Jordan, I think, relayed some of the timetable. On Friday, July 1st, the Attorney General said she would take whatever recommendations FBI came up with. On Saturday, the 2nd of July, the vans pull up and they interviewed the witness for what, 4 hours, was it?
Something like that. I
Yeah,
don't really
something
recall.
like that. And I asked the questions if it was recorded, and was no. Did he participate in it, the director? No. Then we found out that there were the 302s that were taken. Is that correct? The summaries are taken.
A 302 for Ms. Clinton? Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then on July 5th, the 4th was a Monday, it was announced by the director there would be no prosecution or case closed by basically the Attorney General the next day. That's pretty much the sequence, isn't it?
I think he made that recommendation,
Yeah,
yes.
and the case is closed. Now, I've been on the committee longer than anyone here. I can never remember an instance, and the chairman went back to before the Teapot Dome scandal, when even during some of these investigations, we have always had access to information, and that has been the case, hasn't it? That we've always had access, unfettered access. The committee, again, the chairman cited time after time.
I don't know about unfettered access before my time.
But we've gotten the information. Again, he has that, and I'd like it made part of the record, Mr. Chairman, the report that you have.
Without objection, so ordered.
And we do know that the secretary used a private server which had emails that contained classified information. Is that not right, Ms. Walsh? Or, all of this community would agree on that?
About her use of a private server, sir?
The secretary used a private server, and on it, and going through the server was classified information. I mean, everybody, unless you're on another planet, knows that, including these. They're all shaking their head affirmatively. The director, when he was here, said he didn't know if there was a possibility that it could have been hacked, that information could have been made public. We have really a national security issue here, too, that Congress, in its responsibility to investigate, is now being denied the information about what really took place. You're participating in keeping that information from us, Mr. Herring.
If I could just say a couple of things. You know, one, on the person identifiable information, I obviously have a subpoena here for that now. I engaged Mr. Chavitz's staff earlier today about a compromise that
Well, we're going to get the 302s one way or another, but you have not given us all the 302s, right?
not yet. We did prioritize them, and we did the most important.
That's not a question. You don't get to prioritize. Never in the history of investigations that I've participated in. We want the information. We are entitled to the information. We are the investigative branch. Collectively, we represent the American people.
Certainly.
And you have denied that. Now, we've had to file with you, Mr. Krasnick, a referral. How long before you act on the referral? You have the referrals?
We have the letter from the chairman and Chairman Goodlad.
What's the timetable? I mean,
I can't give you a timetable. We've referred it. It's being reviewed, and I can't give you a timetable for an investigation.
you are, again, withholding information that this committee legitimately requested the director is, and he promised that he would provide us. That's not acceptable.
Gentleman's time has expired. Yes, the ranking
Chairman,
member.
just yield for just 1 second. Mr. Micah asked about, just asked a question that just sparked my interest. You said you were having discussions with the Republican staff. Is my staff involved in that, in those discussions? I'm just curious.
Not as of today, no, sir.
Not as of today?
Well, I had a conversation with Mr. Chaffetz's staff earlier today, but your staff was not a part of it, sir.
Is that, is that your normal course of doing things?
Information to protect somebody from our scrutiny?
No, not at all.
Has anybody at this table?
Gentleman's time has expired. We have votes on the floor that are 10 minutes away. We have members who still haven't asked questions, plus we need to do a recorded vote. So we're going to have to leave it here and now recognize.
I appreciate the chairman's indulgence.
Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Meadows, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Herring, would you say that the FBI's investigation and the delivery of documents have been very systematic and principled?
Yes, as far as delivery of.
So there's no haphazard method of delivering documents?
The documents we provided to Congress, sir?
Yes.
No, I think it's been thoughtful and deliberative. And
Okay. Can you tell me why you didn't deliver the documents that the chairman asked for on July the 11th to the committee? You didn't deliver them to the committee. You actually delivered them to another entity, did you not?
That's correct. We delivered it.
Why did you not deliver it to the committee?
Well, because those documents contain classified and other sensitive materials and need to make sure they're handled appropriately.
All right. So are you willing to deliver all the unclassified documents to this committee?
So I think that
Yes or no? Because you can't have the first statement without the second statement. If the reason you sent it there was because it was classified, are you willing to give all the unclassified documents to this committee?
So the documents that we
Yes or no?
We will give so we've given certain documents to the committee already.
Yes or no? It is a real simple question. Will you give all the unclassified documents to this committee, since the reason that you gave them to somebody else was that there was classified documents?
So the documents.
Yes or no?
The documents have the restrictions on them. And
yes or no? Why would they have? Who placed the restrictions? You?
No.
FBI?
Yes.
So the answer is you place restrictions, so you're not going to give the unclassified documents to this committee.
So we've given this committee access to all the documents through.
That's not the question. It's a great answer to a question I didn't ask. Are you willing to give the unclassified documents to this committee?
All I can do is tell you that I'll take it back.
All right. So let me ask you another question, because you said that it was systematic. I went to the classified room, and there's two big binders there. One binder had some documents. The second binder that we got from the FBI had more documents than the first binder, and yet they were supposed to be identical. Would you say that was?
So I'd like to address this in the classified setting, if I could. I think
was that an oversight?
I think the details are important of what the differences are.
But we just asked for a second copy, so would that not be haphazard? It doesn't seem too methodical, because when we went page for page, they didn't match up. So who made the decision to give us a different set?
I'd like to address that in the closed session, please.
Well, let me just say this. There was 27 new emails. There was a number of different types of information that didn't seem to go, and I don't want to share anything classified, so you admit that the first set and the second set were not identical.
They were not identical. There were some differences.
Okay. So what were the non-classification agency equities that prevented the initial disclosure of the 27 emails that we got in the second batch?
Again, classified session, I prefer to discuss.
Were all of those from one agency?
I would prefer to address it outside of the setting.
Okay, I understand that all of those were from one agency. Is that correct?
Look, the whole issue is sort of the handling of classified information.
So what was the agency?
I don't want to get into that here in this setting. I'm happy to answer your question.
Well, I have one of the emails that was withheld that said that it was later marked unclassified / CIA use only. So was that your justification for withholding it?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand.
Well, it said unclassified CIA only. So, Mr. Higgins, let me come to you. Did you read those emails that were in the second batch?
Sir, I'd prefer to answer any questions about the classification review in closed setting.
All right. So no reason why they were withheld.
I'd prefer to answer any questions about the classification
All right.
review in a closed
So I understand you're asking for those documents back. Is that correct? That's not classified. Are you asking for them back?
Sir, I'd prefer in a closed session to answer any questions about the classification review.
All right. Did Director Brennan talk to you about that, Mr. Higgins?
Again, sir, I'd prefer to answer those questions.
All right. I can see where this is leading. So let me finish by this saying, you have finished all the redaction. Is that correct, Mr. Herring, on what you gave us on the unclassified documents? The redaction, the copies that we got to see on those unclassified documents, are the redactions done?
For the ones that you all have,
Yes.
they're
All
not
right.
necessarily.
So will you comply with the federal law to release those in 20 days according to FOIA law? I'll yield back.
Sorry, what was the gentleman's answer? What was your answer to that question?
The redactions are completed for the ones that are here with Congress, the ones we've released. We're working on the remaining 302s. The PII redactions for the remaining 302s all in process.
Well, what I believe Mr. Meadows is asking is that under FOIA, there's a 20-day requirement to respond to a FOIA request. Now that we know that they're all done, will you release those within the 20-day time frame?
So I'm not a FOIA guy. They're not all completed for the other 302s. The
Are
remainder
there any that are completed?
I'm sorry?
Are there any that are completed?
I don't know the status. I don't know the status of all the
We'll,
ones.
we'll go into that tomorrow. We've gone past our time. Let's now recognize the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Cartwright, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Herring, I want to give you a better chance to answer some of my colleague, Mr. Meadows' questions. First of all, your title is you are the Acting Assistant Director for Congressional Affairs of the FBI. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're in that post for how long?
About a month.
Did you say you used to work for Mr. Goodlatte?
I did a detail to the Hill, to the Judiciary, for about 15 months.
Oh, okay. And was that reporting to Mr. Goodlatte?
Certainly did. I was actually technically assigned to the Crime Subcommittee, and Sensenbrenner was the chair of that.
And the Goodlatte we're talking about is the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you just were hammered with all of these yes or no questions, and I could see you having trouble with them. The trouble you were having, Mr. Herring, did not stem from your lifelong ambition to protect Secretary Clinton, did it?
No, sir.
No. All right. In fact, the pointed question that my good friend, Mr. Meadows, was going over and over about was, will you turn over certain documents, yes or no? You're unable to say yes or no because that's not your call. You have to take it back to the office and take it up the chain of instruction, don't you?
Yes, sir.
That's why you couldn't answer yes or no.
Certainly.
Well, how fair was it for anybody to hit you with that kind of yes or no question when you couldn't give a yes or no answer? How fair was that?
I'm here to answer the questions as best I can.
Yeah. And I wonder how fair it is to second guess the FBI, officers who are sworn to uphold, defend, and protect our Constitution, and not caring where the political chips may fall. When Director Comey came in and testified, up until the time he decided not to prosecute, he was universally applauded on both sides of the aisle, particularly on the Republican side of the aisle, for his judgment, for his service, for his patriotism in this nation. And then, when it was his recommendation, which he now says was not even close, not to prosecute Secretary Clinton for the way she handled her email, all of a sudden he is reviled, and all of his decisions, up and down, are being second-guessed by the Republicans on this committee. I agree with my colleagues. This is nothing but a show trial. It is nothing but political theater. And the only reason, the exceptional reason that this is happening is that a couple of months from now, people are going to have to decide whether to vote for Secretary Clinton for president. Now, Ms. Fryfield, I'm sorry that you and the other witnesses are being put in this awkward position today. The chairman invited you to a classified hearing, but he is now springing this on you. I will withhold most of my questions to the classified bit of this, but we have to talk about the marking of classified documents. I mean, it's being bandied about that documents can't be produced because they're highly classified. Well, to be classified, according to the manual, which follows Executive Order 13526, a document has to have something that identifies who originally classified it. It has to identify the agency and office of origin of the classification. It must identify the reason for the classification. It must identify the date of the classification. And they typically also have a banner, both across the top and the bottom, stating the level of classification: top secret, confidential, eyes only, whatever it is. Ambassador Kennedy testified that none of the emails provided to Congress had any of these indicators, and at our hearing we asked Ambassador Kennedy about 3 documents, 3 out of 30,000, that included a small c in parentheses, even though the documents didn't have any of these other indicators for classified documents. State Department spokesman John Kirby said the markings on those emails were an error and they were not, quote, necessary or appropriate at the time they were sent as an actual email, and Ambassador Kennedy agreed. We asked him about one of those emails dated August 2nd, 2012, and he confirmed that the C in parentheses in that email was a mistake. He also confirmed that every paragraph in that email was also marked sensitive but unclassified. And we asked Ambassador Kennedy whether the FBI consulted with the State Department about the classification status of this particular email, and he said he'd get back to us. My question to you is, do you know the status of that request, Ms. Fryfield?
I believe he's going to get you the answer the next day or so.
I think the
next day or two. I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. It is the intention of the chair to exhaust the questioning appropriate for an opening session, but pursuant to House Rule 11, Clause 2G2, I move that part of the remainder of the hearing will be closed to all persons other than the members of the House, staff of the committee with appropriate security clearances, the official reporter, and the witnesses and their counsels with appropriate security clearances, because of the expected testimony received may include material designated as classified. Remind members that this is not a debatable motion. Pursuant to the House rules, the motion must be approved by a recorded vote. The question is on closing part of the remainder of the hearing to the public. And again, it's the intention of the chair to allow members to ask further questions in the unclassified setting and then go in.